Hello, everybody. Welcome to the special 10th anniversary edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Going back to the early days, this is 10 years this show's been on the air now.
Yes.
And there have been a lot of hosts. I just happen to be the newest of the hosts. It started, I tell you what, we know that American Atheists, Madeline Mary O'Hare, when she was here, had a public access program. And Joe Zamecki, who's the Texas director for American Atheists, is here with us, who was also largely responsible for this show and one of the original co-hosts for the show. So, Joe, why don't you give us some background on the old days, Grandpa?
In December of 1997, we had our first show, which was a half an hour long and not a call-in show and not live. We did that at Fur's Cafeteria, and it was like an introductory show, a pilot, if you will. And it was me as the host, Mary Sue Osborne, and Don Rhodes. And on that show, we all three came out, so to speak, to the city of Austin, and it was a lot of fun. It's a great thrill to be here once again. I just wanted to say thanks for having me on, y'all.
Sure. Now,
Great to have you back.
when the AC was first talking about this and you did the pilot, what exactly did you guys envision? I mean, were you just planning on keeping it as just a short, we're going to pre-record this and put it out there?
You know, at first we thought whatever we could do, whatever we could get away with at the time. And we really, none of us really knew much about TV production, but it was a great learning process. But we had some volunteers who were really eager to get into it and to spend the time necessary and the effort to learn about this sort of thing and put it on. Now, at first it was just what we can do. And then slowly over time, we got on live a half an hour. And I think this studio was actually the first one that we did live. And we took some calls. It was a lot of fun. But again, you know, we were very new to it. But then slowly it became an hour and then an hour and a half. And we were in the larger studio for a while. And it culminated in a good year that I was there, the first year, 98. And then I left in 98, the end of 98. And so it continued on as I went to New Jersey with American Atheists. But
Now, on the first shows that you were on, who else was on it with you?
well, let's see, Don Rhodes. And, well, the very first episode, like I said, we had a different set of people, but I was the first co-host, and Ray Blevins was the first host with Don Rhodes. And, like I said, it was in this studio here, I believe. Very low-tech, but it was some great volunteers also behind the scenes who helped us out and make it all possible. In fact, I was never a producer. I never took any of those classes or anything, so I was very thankful that some other folks did. But it was a lot of work in just putting a show together anyway, because, you know, we used to bring in a stack of newspaper articles and try to go through those, and there were a lot of interesting news stories in the atheist movement at the time to talk about. We also came up with the idea to put bumper stickers right up here. We all did that for a few years. That was a real good thing, I think, because that put out double the message in the same amount of time. But it's evolved over the years, and I really do like the way y'all have gone and done things here. I'm really proud to say that I was on the show for a while there.
Now, going back to the early days, now Ray was hosting and they started taking live calls then and it became an hour show?
Right. After the first couple of episodes, we took live calls. And
Now, one thing to remember is that when we're talking about this, I mean, not only is this 10 years ago, but at the time I was still a Christian. So not only was I not involved with the show, I wasn't even on your team.
maybe you called in to complain.
I would have called in probably. I've thought about this as
Had
whether
you
or not-
actually seen the show?
Had I seen the show, I might have called in, but I probably would have called in more out of curiosity because I didn't really have a good understanding of atheist or atheism.
You would have been one of those people who calls in and says, "So y'all are atheists?
So y'all don't believe anything.
Yeah,
Y'all believe in
right.
nothing.
Everybody?
Jeff D.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey.
Jeff has joined us.
Sorry I'm late.
Hey.
I forgot where the studio was.
I did that too.
Been gone way too long. So right now we're up to the point where Ray is hosting, and they've gone to an hour format taking live calls.
Oh, good grief. You're going over the whole thing?
We're going to do a
Yes, we're going
retrospective.
to meticulously take apart every episode of the show.
By the way, we can go
Fantastic.
ahead and put the phone number up, and people can call in as we're discussing this, and we'll interrupt to take calls. And you can see how well you survive the gauntlet of having five of the former or five hosts from the show to answer your
Let's
questions.
see you prove there's a God now.
I'll just pass that one off to Jeff. Russell, go long. So, I guess now that you're here, we can move over to when you got involved with the show for the first time.
Well, I had left the ACA shortly after the incident where Joe Zamecki, I clearly remember, suggested that the ACA ought to do a public access show. And everybody else in the group was like, no, they'll come and find us and mow us down with machine guns. We can't do anything like that. That would just be too audacious, too inflammatory. Yeah. So I had gone away and was working with the University Skeptical Society student group at UT. And while I was hanging out there with Dennis Loubet, who is now
hosting the nonprofit.
He's officially the host.
Well, that's what we call him. He does all the work. I just show up.
Dennis and I were hanging out with the University Skeptical Society, and then I heard the ACA had actually gotten a TV show going. So that's how I found out about it. What else do you want to know?
And when was this, and who was running the
show? Ray was the host, and Joe was the co-host.
So when did you actually come on the show for the first time as like a co-host or anything?
I guessed. I appeared as a guest a few times, didn't I?
Many.
Huh?
Yeah, many.
Many times?
Many times, yeah.
It's been a long time ago. I don't remember. Then was that when you were heading off to New Jersey that
December of 98.
Wound up getting the co-host slot. Mm-hmm. Right.
And at that time, it was a constant co-host every week. We didn't rotate through. It was just,
I have a bunch of videotapes from those days, from the early days.
Well, we need them.
Do you?
I
thought the group had a complete library now.
Not complete. There's some still missing.
I'll bring in the stuff I've got. I might have something that nobody else has.
So, to kind of keep going down the history, after you took over as co-host for a while, then Ray left. And you jumped into the host slot.
That was when Ray announced that he had found Jesus or some shit.
Something crazy like that.
He went on a spiritual quest.
He decided he needed to explore his spiritual side, and that was just too creepy. So he went off and did that, and I wound up host. It's not the best way to do it, I don't think. And my co-host was Martin Wagner at first.
Not immediately.
Who was co-host at first? There had to be somebody.
I thought it was Martin.
I think it was Martin.
So.
I'm pretty sure.
I guess I had already been producing the show at that point. I don't remember.
Or was Vic on there for a while before
it was
Martin?
Still Vic. I think he was co-hosting and such.
Now, Martin was with us last week. For those of you who missed the show, you can watch it on Google Video and download it. Martin came in because he couldn't be here this week.
Vic was the co-host.
Yeah. And
that's right.
He came in to tell us a little bit about his time on the show and things that he enjoyed and everything else. So if you get a chance, you can go watch that from last week. And then after, I guess, what was it, a year or year and a half that you were hosting?
Oh no, I hosted for
quite a while,
right?
Yeah.
2 years? I think it was more like 2.
And then Martin took over.
Series of co-hosts. Yeah, Martin had been co-hosting, and then I left to start the effort to do the nonprofits.
Yes. And this is the point where you should pause this show and go back and watch last week's to hear all of Martin's stories from his time.